This will be Chapter 7 of Carl Hiaasen's Skink, No Surrender. Marine Corporal Talbot Chalk could have been buried with full honors at the National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia, but his mother wanted him closer to home. The funeral had been held on a sticky July afternoon in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, a month before my cousin ran away. During the church service, somebody had crept onto the property and hot-wired a 2007 white Toyota Camry belonging to the pastor. On the front seat of the car was a printout of the pastor's eulogy, recalling the short life and brave death of Earl Talbot Chalk. The pastor had meant to present the copy of his stirring words to Talbot's parents, but instead it had ended up in the hands of a car thief who decided to also steal the dead soldier's name. This fact was relayed to me over the phone by Detective Trujillo. "Probably not what you wanted to hear," he said, "but it's progress. The preacher's Toyota has a small hole in the rear windshield that matches one on the car in the security video from the Orlando airport." "Where exactly on the rear window?" I asked. "Dead center. Preacher gave his kid a pellet gun for his 8th birthday. Not a genius move." I didn't tell the detective that I was on the road with a one-eyed former governor searching for my cousin. We'd already counted 23 white Toyota Camrys, none of them carrying a couple that looked like Mally and her online Talbot. When I informed Trujillo about my cousin's last phone message, I kept the summary brief. It would have been hard to convince the detective that her mentioning a lost species of woodpecker was a coded cry for help. Besides, the remote area where Skink and I believed she was being held, if she was being held, called for a stealthy approach. A convoy of speeding police cars might spook the bogus Talbot Chalk into doing something drastic. For now, at least, he didn't realize anybody was on his trail. From Clearwater, Skink took Highway 19, which tracks along the Gulf side of Florida, all the way to the town of Perry, where you hang a hard left into the Panhandle. That's the route I'd mapped out on my smartphone. It was the quickest way to get to where we needed to be, but very soon we got sidetracked. A blue SUV blew past doing 80, the driver tossing an empty Budweiser can out the window. One lousy can, all right? The governor said the guy was a moron, which he undoubtedly was, and after that I didn't think about it. For sure I didn't look at the speedometer, which would have clued me in that Skink was accelerating to keep pace with the blue SUV. I was preoccupied with my laptop, rereading a worried email from my mother. When the SUV slowed down and made the westward turn to Homosassa, we turned too. "Where are you going?" I asked Skink. The look on his face was something different. Not angry or agitated, just cold as granite. Probably the same expression he wore when he heard the scrape of the Dodge Olney's trowel in the sand. I tried once more. "Governor, what are you going to do?" No answer. "It was just a beer can, seriously." He shook his head like he was disappointed in me. "Anyway, we don't have time," I said. "We gotta hurry to catch up with Mally." "Son, this won't take long." That was it, as if no explanation was necessary. He just expected me to understand. The sky was darkening with low storm clouds as the SUV pulled into a restaurant called Bucky's Deluxe Dining. It looked more like a bar. Skink kept going until he found a convenience store. 15 minutes later, we were back at Bucky's in a driving rain. I won't defend what the governor did, but it could have turned out way worse for the moron with the SUV. He could have ended up in a hospital like Dodge Olney. Instead, his vehicle was the only thing that got hurt. You don't need to be a trained mechanic to know that gasoline engines won't run on water, barley malt, hops, rice, and yeast, which are the basic ingredients of Budweiser beer. I Googled it while hunkered low in the Malibu. Skink knelt by the blue SUV and calmly poured an entire six-pack into the fuel tank. Then, just to make sure his message was received, he jammed the empties up the tailpipe. I was praying that nobody in the restaurant could see what was happening through the downpour. Once we were back on Highway 19, I sat upright and told the governor he was crazy. "What were you thinking? I mean it." Litter bugs are the lowest. His clothes were sopping, his shower cap spangled with raindrops. "What happens if you get thrown in jail?" I was pretty upset. "Am I supposed to go save Mally all by myself?" "There's some beautiful country up in this part of the state. I see some jackass trashing it. I can't turn away." The governor's glass eye had fogged, but of course he didn't know it. Earlier, I'd asked him why he didn't get a green one to match his real one. He said that the brown eye came from a stuffed bear, which is why it didn't fit in properly in his semi-human skull. He'd never, ever harm a bear, he said. Bears carry heavy mojo. The taxidermied specimen belonged to some fool who fancied himself a big game hunter. Skink had gone to visit the hunter on a non-social visit, his words. After calming down, I said, "What you just did back there was a crime. You totaled that dude's engine." "He might coax a mile or two out of it." "What if they had security cameras in the parking lot? In Homosassa, Florida?" Ha! Trying to reason with him was hopeless. "Friend of mine," he said, "once emptied a loaded dumpster into a BMW convertible. Same basic scenario. Driver had thrown all his Burger King bags out on the turnpike." "I get why you're mad. It makes me mad too, but we are who we are." "Yeah, whatever," I said. Beth called again. She got a text from Mally, and it was like, "La-di-da, TC is so awesome," etc. I told Beth I was heading upstate on a hunch, and I'd check back in a few days. She kept on talking. Honestly, I didn't really want to hear about her problems with her boyfriend, Taylor. All he cared about was baseball, she said. Plus, he was a lame dancer. I hardly knew Taylor, but I had no interest in getting between him and Beth. Once she dumped him, different story. Skink was pretending not to listen as I worked my way out of the conversation. After the call was over, I shrugged and said, "Hey, she's just a friend." "I've had a few of those." He scratched at his beard. "How's your mother holding up?" I opened up my laptop and read her email aloud. It was part mom, part lawyer. "Dear Richard, I intended to say all this in a phone call, but sometimes it's easier to sort my thoughts when I put them down in writing. You understand why I'm not enthusiastic about this impulsive trip of yours. We're all worried about your cousin, but my job is to worry about you. I spoke at length with the mysterious Mr. Tile, and in confidence he gave me the history of the gentleman with whom you're traveling. He said that this person, despite his age, was physically capable of protecting you from any harm, and that he wouldn't hesitate to give up his own life in your defense, if necessary. It would be untrue to say I wasn't comforted by Mr. Tile's assurances. I did a little research of my own, which confirmed the basic biographical details about this Skink individual. However, I also came across accounts of certain incidents that I can only pray have been exaggerated by legend. If even half the stories are true, he clearly isn't the most stable of companions. Please, please be careful. Mr. Tile had promised to stay in contact, but I'm still very apprehensive about this road trip you've embarked upon. Personally, I don't believe Mally can be found if she doesn't wish to be, or that she necessarily needs to be rescued. Her phone calls home have been fairly breezy and lighthearted, according to Dan and Sandy. Based on past experiences, I'm betting she'll be back in Loggerhead Beach as soon as she gets bored with this latest escapade. Obviously, you believe she might be in danger, and if that's true, then you could be in danger too. Again, I'm asking you to back off and let the authorities handle this. There's nothing you and Skink can do that couldn't be done more safely by experienced law enforcement officers. Honestly, it's only because of Mr. Tile that I haven't called the police myself and put out an Amber Alert for you. At times like this, I find myself wondering what your father would do if he were here. As you know, he was always the free spirit in our family. He used to tell me that it was healthy to let you boys cut loose and take a few chances, but I suspect that even he would be alarmed by what you're doing. Please come home, honey. Love always, Mom. I shut the computer and looked at the governor to see if he was offended by my mother's suggestion that he might be a psycho. All he said was, "You're a lucky young man." "I know. You want to go home, that's cool. It's not like I want to, but something happens to you, she'll be shattered. That's why I quit surfing after Dad died," I said. "My brothers, they're just insane on the water. No fear. Mom can't even watch. You're the one she depends on to always be there, the steady son, right?" Something like that. Outside, the rain had let up. The Malibu's windshield wipers squeaked on the glass. One of Skink's songs was playing on the sound system. "Help me, Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda." He said, "There's an airport in Bay County. Have her call and line up a flight to Orlando. I'll put you on a Greyhound bus, but you might wind up sitting next to somebody who looks worse than me." "Why can't I just ride back with you in the car?" Because I'm not going back. Oh, at first I didn't catch on. I'm going to find your cousin, he said. And that was that. With or without my help, the old man aimed to track down Mally and take her away from the Talbot Chalk impostor. A few hours later, as the sun disappeared through the frill of fluffy pink clouds, we stood along the Masalina Bayou in downtown Panama City. The tarpon dock drawbridge was rising for a shrimp boat coming in from the Gulf. Above its stern swirled the confetti of gulls and terns crying hungrily. The boat captain sounded his horn. My shoulders were shaking. I was so amped. This must be it, the bridge she called me from. The shrimper was eyeing us from the cockpit as his boat rumbled past. Skink pulled off his shower cap and shoved it inside a pocket. The gash on his scalp was purple from iodine, and I could see a cross-hatching of black threads. He must have pulled the car over and stitched himself up while I was asleep. So, what'd you tell your mom? He asked. I told her I trusted you. The governor smiled. Does that mean you don't want to ride to the airport? No airport, I said. Outstanding. He knotted his snake rattle necklace and presented it to me. I wish I still had it.